Hey guys, welcome. Today's yin practice is devoted to the desk dwellers, to those of us that sit a little bit more maybe than we want to, and then leads to that compression that we get through the front body, shoulders, front of hips, sometimes even compression through the belly, which leads to some digestive stuff when things don't have enough space. So we'll work all of those things in just a shorter practice. So this can even be a great one if you need a break midday or right at the end of the day when it feels like you've been sitting all day long. We'll use this practice to balance that out. It will be nice to have a handful of props. So, a couple of pillows or a bolster, a blanket or a towel roll. And if you have a block or even just a throw pillow, something like that to have nearby will be great. And we're going to start lying down on our bellies and have your block or even a throw pillow nearby. And you can start off just by stacking your hands, make a pillow, turn your head to one side, and close your eyes. And just let your feet come wide enough that your legs feel like they can start to relax. And then to start to take some fuller breaths. Right? Little by little, don't push it. And to see if you can start to feel your breath fill up all the way down into that space of your belly. You can feel the expansion that just presses gently down into your mat. Often, I know it's true for myself when I'm sitting and working, especially if we're really caught up in a project or something that we're doing, the breath tends to get forgotten. Right? We're sitting hunched over, so there's not enough room for breath. We're focused on what we're doing, so we're not remembering to breathe fully. And then maybe our brain and body aren't getting quite the oxygen that would be helpful. So here, just let yourself begin to settle into those fuller breaths. And take just a few more like that. And we're going to keep the lower body just as it is, but prop yourself up onto your forearms for Sphinx pose. And you can make some adjustments here in Sphinx pose. Sometimes a good starting point is elbows under shoulders and just see how that feels. For some of us, that's a lot of back bend. And you can walk your elbows a little bit further forward and release some of that back bend. Let's find that place. It starts to feel like there's some sensation. It feels effective, but that you're not causing any strain, particularly in the low back. Right? No pinching along the spine, no pressure. Right? We're just starting to reverse. Usually that the low back, when we're sitting a lot, can lose its natural curve. So inviting a little bit more of that back in. And see if you can really stay soft through your legs here. Your heels might fall in or out, just let them go wherever they do. And if it feels like your low back could use a little bit of support, just find the tiniest little draw up and in of your low belly. It doesn't have to be a big effort, big engagement. Sometimes just a touch of support. And you can let your chin move down towards your chest if that feels okay for your neck. If you have a block, right, or a couple of pillows you want to stack, you can bring your forehead there to rest. It's just nice to let the head relax there too. And then just let the center of your chest start to soften in between your arms. And come back to that sensation of full, steady breaths. These passive back bends, right here without a ton of engagement, can be really good for the discs right, in between the spine. Right? More often, not always, but more often when we think of as a bulging disc, right, that little bit of the disc starts to sneak out in between the vertebrae and it comes towards the back. Probably more often because we sit hunched over and it presses it in that direction. So this little gentle pressure along the back line of the spine can just help to encourage those discs back into place if that's something that's happening in your body. And if it's causing any pain and discomfort, adjust the back bend or come out. We want sensation, feel like this is effective, but not to the point of pain. Right? Then chances are we're causing more damage in the long run. We want to shift that mindset of no pain, no gain into just no pain. A place where our body can reverse, balance out some of the postures that we have throughout the day without having to force it back in that direction. And let's just take a few more breaths here. And if you're using that block for your head for support, set that off to the side. Come all the way back down again to make a pillow with your hands. You can turn your head to the other side and then go ahead, bend your knees and just take a really slow, mindful windshield wiper of your feet side to side. And there's just a little bit of movement in between the longer holds can feel good. As long as it's not fast and quick. Sometimes then to me it feels like we're shocking the body from one, right, those slow, long holds into quick movement. So just keep it mindful. And then bring both feet down to your mat. Great. From here, bring your arms out wide to a T shape. And you're going to take your right arm and just work it a little bit more towards the right corner of your mat. It doesn't have to come a huge diagonal, just a couple inches up from straight. It's going to get into the fibers in the front of the shoulder a little differently. And then use your left hand, roll onto your right side. I'm going to come with my back to you so you can see that arm position, arm placement. You can keep legs stacked, or you can step your top foot behind. And if this is feeling like that's a lot in the shoulder, try rolling forward a little bit. You could place a pillow or a bolster right in front of you and lean forward a little bit more into that. And that will likely ease some of the sensation within the front of the chest and the shoulder. Right? Sometimes even just letting the front knee come forward will ease it a little bit, as opposed to stepping it back where there's more sensation. Let your head rest heavy. You can even slide a pillow under there. So all sorts of options to adjust the pose to make it work for you. You need to find the right amount of sensation. And then once you're there, got that all sorted out, let's let your body start to settle and soften a little bit more. You're releasing the effort and just letting that fascia, the connective tissue, start to unwind and create a little space. I think whether we spend an hour or 8 hours a day at the computer, we know that what that can do to the front of the chest and the shoulders with that rounded forward posture. I think this is one of my favorite ones for creating a little more space there. Could probably do it every day. So that we're looking at just these few minutes at a time to just help to unwind. Sometimes how we spend most of the day. But even if we can do that on a regular basis, it really does start to make a difference. And just check in with your breath. Make sure you're at a place where it can still feel full and steady. And then just take a few more breaths here. You can unwind, come on back to your belly. Make a pillow with your hands again. Turn your head to one side or the other. And just take a couple breaths at center. Sometimes it's nice to feel like things come back to neutral. While we're working the shoulder, there is some twist in the lower back. So let that settle back. And also just to feel the effects of the pose. What feels different now from one side to the other. Okay, and then you're going to do the same with your left arm. Bring arms out wide. Walk your hand forward just a couple inches at that diagonal. And then use your right hand. Roll up onto your left side. You can adjust a little bit. I do think it's nice if you're going to adjust, roll out, make any little adjustments. Can bend the elbow a little bit if you want more sensation. Find the right place. And then again, you can stay forward a little bit more towards your belly, either with a pillow or two there, or just come forward onto your top knee. You can step that top foot behind. That might bring in a little bit more sensation. And then let the side of your head rest. Your ribs, your leg, just settle down to the ground. And just starting to settle into that place that feels supported and soft, even within the sensation that's happening. I think for many of us, this one can bring up some good sensation, some good awareness of how that front of the chest and shoulder feels. And just make sure you're, again, at a place where you can feel that full, steady breath. You might even notice that the more space we start to create along the front line of your body, that the more room there is for breath. Right? We open up space around the lungs and the belly. It just allows the breath to move more freely. And just that is such a great benefit of the practice, to bring in more oxygen, which brings in more nourishment, helps our brains to function a little more clearly. We get that computer fog from sitting all day. Sometimes just a little breath helps. And take just a few more breaths here. And again, roll back to your belly one more time. Make a pillow with your hands. Turn your head to one side. You can just take a couple breaths in stillness, or if it feels good to move your hips, just really slowly side to side. Get a little bit of movement back into your low back. You can do that. Okay, and from here, bring your hands by your ribs and press up to tabletop. Okay, you're going to want to have your blocks. If you don't have blocks and you have a couple pillows, that's great. And then even your blanket or your towel roll. Okay, we'll set up here for dragon pose. And so if you have blanket or towel, if you know you have sensitive knees, sometimes it's nice to have that underneath your left knee, and then you'll step your right leg forward. And then take your right foot out wide enough so that both hands come inside your front foot. And just pause there for a second. See what you notice for sensation. Might be front of left hip, might be inner right leg, outer right hip. Everyone feels things a little differently. You can say that's plenty of sensation for me, I'm good there. Or you can also slide your left knee back a little bit more, and that just might shift the amount of sensation that you feel. Okay, and then from here you have a few options. You can stay up on flat palms. Right? If you have blocks, you can bring your hands up onto blocks for a little bit more support. Or you can bring your forearms down onto your blocks to settle in maybe a little bit more sensation. You can do the same if you have a pillow or two and stack those up and just bring the floor up a little bit closer to you. Sometimes forearms all the way down to the mat is a lot of sensation. So play around, find the right amount of support here for you. And then you can let your chin move down towards your chest if that feels okay for your neck. And then when you feel that edge of sensation, you can even play with backing out just a little bit. This is a pose that I think it's not uncommon that the sensation can get stronger, not always, but sometimes throughout the pose. So one of the things I've been playing with in practice is to find that edge. Like, okay, that's enough. And then back out just a little bit so that my body has room to settle in as the tissues start to unwind and open. But you can find what works best for you. You just don't want to push past that place that feels effective and supported. And when we get past that, then sometimes the tissues just start to tighten back up. They resist it, which can be counterproductive. Instead of just letting your body settle and soften into gravity. And just also let your breath be your guide. So that if you notice the breath becomes shallow or too fast, back out a little. Like I was noticing that starting to come past my edge. So I'm going to back out a little, come up onto hands. So that even within the stretch and the space, that there's enough support. You can just really let your attention tune into where you really feel the sensation. And then what it feels like. And just take a few more breaths here. And move slowly. If you're not up on flat palms, find your way there. And then step your right foot all the way back. If you're on that blanket, just come off of that. You can slide it off to the side for a minute. Come back to child's pose for a couple breaths. We go from that big opening on the front of the hip flexor, just a little counter pose to let now it relax for a moment, soften again. And then go ahead, come back to tabletop. If you're using the blanket or towel, whatever you had, you can slide that over to the right side. And so right knee to your cushion. A throw pillow can work well too there. And then step your left foot forward. Okay, left foot out wide enough so both hands can come inside. And then pick up your right knee, maybe. Slide it back a little if that feels like too far. Just find the right length front to back from foot to knee. And then just pause, check in. This side might feel different. I know it does for me. And so you might choose a different amount of support here, if that's up on palms, with your pillows or your blocks. And find the place where you can settle in. Sensation, but not tension. And that is a fine line sometimes. If it feels okay, just let the weight of your head go. And just feel into that space in the front of the hip. And hip flexors. We talk a lot about the psoas, this key muscle that hinges upper to lower body. And when we sit a little or a lot, that can get pretty short and tight. Sometimes also this great combination of weak and tight, just from being shortened and compressed all day long. And so when we open up this angle on the front of the hip, it takes it in the opposite direction. It allows for a little bit more space to come in. Gives room for blood flow to start to move through. And think about it as making the tissue just more pliable. Instead of things being compressed and bound up, we start to give some space within that connective tissue that wraps all in and around the muscle fibers so that things can move a little bit more freely. You get that sensation sometimes where things just feel sticky and that the tissues of the body just kind of lose their glide, their ability to move smoothly from one range of motion to the next. And these longer holds of yin can be great at maintaining those ranges of motion, for allowing more space and more freedom of movement throughout those places that get sticky, right? They get a little bound up because of our habits and postures that we have throughout the day. Good. Give yourself just a few more breaths here. And then start to walk yourself back up. Slide slowly. Slide your hips back. You can set your props off to the side again. And then one more time, come back to that child's pose. You can scoot your blanket or towel to the side. And this time, try knees together. So you get that little bit of compression across the front of both hips. You can settle your forehead down to your mat and just take a couple of breaths. And then walk yourself all the way back up to sit on your heels. You can shift your hips off to the side, swing your legs out in front. For this next one, you're going to want the support of either a bolster and a pillow or a couple of pillows. You're going to just set up your support so it's behind you on the back half of your mat. It's also nice to have a blanket or your towel roll here. You might want that just for a little bit of cushion or for a roll under your ankle. Okay. And then start by snuggling the base of your spine up against your pillows, your support, whatever you've got. Okay. And then you're going to tuck your right foot back. And this one, for some of us, it's great on knees and ankles and hips. For some, not the best. If this doesn't quite work for you, I'll give you a variation here in just a second. But here are some options. You can keep your foot flexed, right? Sometimes that's best for the ankle. You can make a little roll with your blanket or your towel and slide that underneath your ankle. Sometimes that gives you enough support to get the top of your foot, right, rolled on top of your foot. Or you can place the top of your foot down next to your heel. Right? So different options for different people. If you're like, Amy, great, that's not working for my knees, you can roll onto your side, use your pillow for support, and come here. It's the same shape, without some of that pressure on the joints, right? So all of that being said, I just like to give a lot of options for this pose as it's great for some and more challenging for others. Okay, from here, start to walk your hands back. Lift your hips just an inch or two and lengthen your tailbone down towards your knees, and then set your hips back down. Right, that's just going to give you a little bit more space in your low back, and then you can start to walk yourself back down. And that might be to forearms. That might be staying right up here, right, leaning back on your hands. Or that might be lying all the way down on your pillows or your support. Right, we're all going to be in a different place here. Right, and even if you're sitting fairly upright, like where we started, let's see if you can take hands behind you to lean back a little, with just the idea of keeping the front body a little bit more open. And then there's one other option you can play with here. You can keep your left leg straight out as it is, or you can bend your knee and place the sole of your foot to your mat. That might change sensation a little bit, so do what feels best for your body. And then if you are all the way down, you can just take your arms out wide like a cactus shape, or just somewhere where it feels like chest and shoulders have some space. And then with all of that set up, right, just close your eyes, take a few fuller breaths. And so might get a little bit more space in the front of the hip like we had last time, but also now some space through the quadriceps, right, front of the thighs, which also, again, just from sitting can get a little bit more bound up. And with this lift of the pillows underneath you or just leaning back, and the goal being to create some space through your belly and maintain that space that we opened up through your chest and shoulders. And just feel where your breath wants to go here. And see if you can keep it full and steady. And we'll stay just a few more breaths. And then you can start to unwind your legs. Use your hands. Help yourself all the way back up. Just take a full breath at center. And then we'll switch to the second side. So you can draw your left thigh back. And all those same options. Right? So either foot flexed, a little blanket or towel roll underneath your ankle, or just foot flat, heel tucked in by your hip. Or side lying and reach back and grab your foot. Okay, wherever you're at, and start to lean back. Bring your weight to your hands. You might stop here and just say like, that's enough. That feels good for me. If you're gonna go any further, lift your hips, lengthen your tailbone down, set your hips back down. Right, just a little space. As we come back, there tends to be more back bend. And then walk yourself back. That might be forearms. That might be all the way down onto your back. You could stack up a couple few pillows if that helps you with the support there. And then that one last option to play with, either right leg straight or bend your right knee, place your foot. Sometimes once I do that, I have to just kind of wiggle the hips around so they feel a little more even and balanced. Right. If you are down, lying down on that support, let your arms come out to the sides. Let the heads of your shoulders drop back. And just feel into that space along the front body here with shoulders back, belly open, thigh open. Notice how it feels different with that space for breath. Right, we're talking about making space for the tissues themselves, those places that get bound up. Also, when we think about that hunched posture, we have less room for the abdominal organs, especially if we sit and eat at a desk while working, which I know I'm guilty of sometimes. We all probably do sometimes. And that affects our ability to digest, for things to move through. We've got room for breath, room for digestion, and space in the tissues. That's by opening up all along that front line of the body. And just take a few more breaths here. And if your right leg is straight or bent, straighten that out. Start to help yourself back up. Unwind your left leg. Take a breath. You can wiggle out through your legs a little bit if that feels good. And then from here, we're just going to come into a brief Shavasana, short practice, but just a couple of minutes of quiet. I'm going to invite you to keep that support, whether it's bolster or a couple pillows behind you, so that we're in Shavasana, but again, maintaining that space all along the front body. Just let yourself just come to lie down. You can take your feet out nice and wide, let your legs take up space. And then either bring your arms out to your sides or even out to a cactus shape if that little bit of extra space feels good. And close your eyes. Let the back of your body settle down into that support. And then just let go of any effort with your breath here. And see if you can take 10 slow, full breaths without having to do much, just by allowing that space to be open in the front body and the breath to move there. And when you're ready, with your next inhale, reach your arms up overhead, lengthen out through your legs, take a full stretch. And then draw your knees towards your chest, roll to your side, and help yourself all the way back up to sitting. And once you get there, bring your hands together at your heart. Sit tall. Lift heart to hands, draw shoulders back, and just feel that space, hopefully, even just a little bit more all along the front line of the body. This can be a great practice to come back to over and over again if you sit at your desk a lot or just sit anywhere a lot and feel crunched in through that front line of the body. Thanks so much for sharing the practice today. Namaste.